morning, and welcome back to Unraveled Game Thoughts. This is truly an unraveled episode because I don't have a clear game plan. I was going to do a little bit of Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle Earth, but I need another one of our house phones, which is out for the day. So I couldn't do that. I thought maybe I will go ahead and do my 2017 top 10 games from 2017. I'll throw that into this episode of Unraveled Game Thoughts. I'll start with a little bit of rambling. One of the games that I did get to play quite recently was Frosthaven. My buddy Colin got that not too long ago, and last Thursday we were able to start playing. I'll try to include a little bit of some video off the side here, maybe some pictures from our game. But that was a lot of fun. We played the first and second scenario. I think it actually is technically maybe like a preliminary, like a learning scenario, and then second scenario. Frosthaven's kind of done what Jaws of the Lion did, where it was they kind of start you out with like a smaller set of cards, and then like you play that intro scenario with fewer cards, and then in the first scenario you get all of your cards, and you can use the X cards that are available to use as well. So I've played Gloomhaven. So to give you some context, if you have played Gloomhaven, much of Frosthaven will not be that different. So I'll caveat that in here in a minute. But for those of you who have never played Gloomhaven, the Frosthaven, some things I might say about Frosthaven might not make much sense. But some interesting aspect. Now, I've only played 2 scenarios of Frosthaven. We haven't even had our first. I think the next time we sit down at the table, we'll do a city. I forget. There's a name of the phase. It's like where you build up the city of Frosthaven, because one element of Frosthaven is that you'll play some scenarios, and then you come back and you'll do a Frosthaven. You'll build up the town. So there's some things you don't have in Frosthaven, shops you can't go to, things like that, until you actually build the building where that shop can exist. And I don't know all the elements of that. We haven't actually done a city building turn or situation yet, but that's next on the radar. But I like the aspect of that, where you're building up the town of Frosthaven, you're establishing its defenses, and what resources are going to be available in the city. And I know some of the character character quests, or like at the beginning of it, you did this in Gloomhaven, but you also do it in Frosthaven, where you draw 2 sort of character quests. It's like your life goal, and you're going to pick one. And so some of those in Frosthaven are to actually establish a certain number of buildings in the city of Frosthaven. So I haven't experienced what it's like to have an attack on Frosthaven after that's been established. I know that things can get destroyed after you've built them up. We'll have to see how hard that is. It'll certainly be interesting to see how much of that will play into the difficulty of the game overall. But the thing that has jumped out to me the most in Frosthaven that I really like is the amping up of character complexity. And I'm playing a medium weight character. I'm playing with the Deathwalker. And so the Deathwalker is a character that creates shadows. It's token you put on the game board, and I can only create up to 5 shadows at any given time. If I was ever going to go create a 6th, I will have to pull a shadow off the board somewhere in order to create a 6th. They're fairly challenging to create, I want to say. And I kind of say that I created 4, I think, in both scenarios. So it wasn't hard to create 4. The catch is that one of the cards that I create shadows with is it just creates 1 shadow, and then obviously it's in my discard. And so I have to wait until I rest to get that back, which is makes it more complex to get that one back. The other was cards that create, or the other major card that I have that creates shadows beyond that one is kind of it's a, what do you call it? I can create 3 shadows at once, but then it's a lost card. It's lost for the scenario. So it's a one-off. So it's a little nerve-wracking to create that at the beginning. You have to time it well, kind of thinking along the lines of like if you ever played with a summoner in Gloomhaven, you got to time the shadows well, because you want to kind of move those shadows around the board, and if you get them too far back in the scenario, then you have to move them farther ahead to get them close to enemies. Sometimes you can pull them off the board to do abilities with your character up close to the enemies, but a lot of times you really want the shadows and your character to be kind of in the same general ballpark. And I haven't played with it enough to really. I have not mastered the character, the Deathwalker, but I have. One of the things that struck me is like I didn't know how often I'd actually be able to kill things. I was afraid that most of my attacks would be a little weaker, and I've learned after the first couple of scenarios that they're actually not terribly weak. They're pretty good attacks that I can pull off during the game. And I ended up knocking out a few enemies over the course of those 2 scenarios we played. Now, I say that because the same card that gives me, like I can just create a shadow on the board within 2 spaces of me, and that goes to my discard. The top half of that card, it's like a scenario effect where if I play it, it's kind of lost for the scenario, but every time I kill an enemy, I create a shadow. Well, that is a very interesting sort of permanent card that allows me to create more perpetual shadows, but I have to constantly kill enemies to do it. So I haven't played that top half of that card yet. I'm kind of hoping for a scenario where there's maybe some smaller enemies that I can knock off pretty easily, vermlings or something like that, and see how that works, see how challenging that is to kill the enemies and get the shadows that way. It's also one that strikes me as a little bit of a chance, because if you do that and then for whatever reason you're not able to knock the enemies off, then you are not creating shadows, and you really want to get a decent number of shadows into play in order to help power some of your abilities. Some of those you have to remove them when you do it, but a lot of times you're just able to act out of the shadows, and it makes for some sneaky, tricky sort of attacks. So my buddy that I was playing with, I played with him and his son. So he played with the Blink Blade, and is still learning that character to get that knocked out. And then his son played with, I think, the Banner Spear. No, the Drifter. He played with the Drifter. It was kind of a jack of all trades character, but the Drifter was seemed pretty powerful. I was impressed at some of the things the Drifter could do. He was a tank-like character, and kind of had to be, because I'm pretty squishy as the Deathwalker, and the Blink Blade is fairly squishy. So we really needed the Drifter to kind of tank for a chunk of the scenario, and did a good job, and has a heal or 2 in their repertoire. So the Drifter was able to keep himself pretty healed up throughout the scenario, which was impressive. I think the Blink Blade could even heal a little bit. It was kind of interesting. I think I was the only one. I don't think I had any heal. I took the heal card out of my deck to put something else in there. I know there's only one, and I didn't really like it that much. So I was relying on the Drifter and the Blink Blade to provide whatever healing I would need, and mostly I just tried not to get hit, because that was an easier way to go about doing that. Lots of good, cool character depth and complexity. Obviously, we haven't unlocked any other characters in the game, so I don't know what's coming down the road, but I'm looking forward to it. I think it'll be a blast. I did notice that on the perks, they're more developed. They're not as most of the perks in your other games. I watched I can't remember the name of the channel I was watching. The guy described it very well, but basically, you could pretty easily, after you played several times in Gloomhaven, you could just say, oh, this is the perk I'm taking first. This is the one I'm taking second. You just kind of, you know the odds, you know what you're kind of specking your character out to be with your card selections, and then you just kind of go in there and you do it. So that's a nice, that they have retweaked the perks. It's a hard decision now. I got one of my perks for the Deathwalker, and I had to really spend some time thinking about what is the best one. Normally in the past, I would just, okay, no negative scenario effects. Easy. I'll take that one first because then I don't have to worry about negative scenario effects. But as good as that is for quite a few scenarios, there were a lot of good perks for the Deathwalker, and I had a hard time thinking which one do I really want. So I think I can't remember which one I ended up going with, but I think I ended up giving myself a little bit better attack with some maybe some dark or something like that I could create. But it's pretty neat the way they've retooled those perks. They're harder to select from. So and the loot in the game is more intriguing because when you loot something, now you draw a loot card, and that tells you what you're going to get at the end of the scenario. So it's either going to be stuff to build up the city, or it's going to be a coin, or it could be experience. And so you never know what you're going to loot, which makes that more engaging because it used to be just, just dropping coins. And I think enemies they just drop loot tokens now. And each scenario has a different loot deck depending on the scenario. So I'm guessing that the loot will continue to get more complex as the game goes on, which is pretty interesting too. So I am looking forward to more scenarios. I think Frosthaven's going to be a blast. I think Frosthaven's going to probably be better in the long run than Gloomhaven was. I will say that Frosthaven, to me, doesn't necessarily replace Gloomhaven. I still enjoy playing Gloomhaven. I don't currently have a plan to get rid of my Gloomhaven. We still had some five-person scenario of Gloomhaven going from a while ago, and I think there's still enough interest in playing it, and some people that I know that still haven't played Gloomhaven that I think would enjoy jumping in on a scenario now and again. And I'm still crossing my fingers and hoping that one day my kids might be more excited about board games and be more interested in playing something like that. So particularly my son, he seems more wired for something like that than my daughter, but we will see. I also, staring at a box, I received Hippocrates in the mail recently. I've read through the instructions, haven't played it yet, but looking forward to playing that in the near future, hopefully. That was one that I really wanted to play at BGA. Wasn't planning on purchasing it, but there was a fantastic sale. I think it was on Game Nerds or Card House. I can't remember the site I got it from, but ended up being like almost half price, and I was like, well, I'll go ahead and get it, and then I can always trade it away or something if I determine it's not going to fit my collection. But it looks like it's fun. We almost played it twice at BGG Con, and it just ended up getting replaced by other games, and then we ran out of time. So, oh well, we'll get to play it soon. The other one that I'm borrowing a copy of Bitoku. Looking forward to trying out the solo mode. That's another one. My goal is to get the Lord of the Rings Journeys to Middle-earth, get a playthrough of that recorded first, post it on the channel, and then Bitoku Solo is next on the radar as far as trying to get items posted on the channel for review. Let's move on, and I'll just do the top 10 games from 2017. It's been a minute since I've done one of these top 10 lists, and I think this is pretty pretty much stayed the same since the last time since I did it. I probably put together the top 10 list for all these different years. I think, I'm trying to think of when I did it. It was probably been about 6 months ago now when I first wrote these out. But I think they're pretty close to the same. And as a reminder, if you haven't watched any of these before, I put these top 10 together, and I differentiate this from like when I'm doing my top 100. So if I'm doing my top 100, I'm doing my top 100. This is how I rank the games based on what I like, based on game style, things of that nature, and then I get my top 100. So I end up with my top 100 favorite games. And the only time I would bear in mind, like, okay, is this a better game? Like, maybe from a more objective point of view, just by design or whatever, or what others might think of this game, is when I need a tiebreaker when it comes to my top 100. So if I come down to two games I like about the same, I'm really having a hard time, which one do I like in front of the other, and end up having to rank them on, Pub Meeple or something, I'm kind of like, I might use I think this one's a slightly better game objectively as a gamer, and so I will put that one in front slightly. But that's more of a nudge, and it's usually the last. I'm usually doing everything I can to figure out what do I like the most before I do that. When I do my top 10 for a given year, what are the best games that came out this year? What I think about the games is definitely impacting that, but I am usually also much more cognizant of objectively what are the best games. So it's not, there are a lot of games that will end up ranking higher on this list because I think overall probably most gamers would consider some games better than others. I know one game on this particular year is not even on my top 100, and I have friends that love the game and would play it just about at the drop of a hat. For me, no, but it's ranking kind of in the middle of these games, so it probably ranks lower than others would rank it, but it's going to make this list because too many people I know love this game that I can't leave it off the list. So, and then there's a little bit of I try to kind of mix in different kinds of games. So maybe a game that is a good solid game, I wouldn't call it a favorite game, but it's a good staple game in a collection. Something like, think like Splendor. Like Splendor is a good, like, I don't think a lot of people tend to get rid of Splendor. It's just a nice one to have in your collection. It's a good filler, and it's not a bad game. It's not going to be your, like, for a lot of people, it's not the go-to game. It's not a lot of people's favorite game, but it's a good solid game, and it's good to have, and it's good to be able to bring out. So that might be, in a given year, that might be one that makes a list, not because it's the best game ever, but because it's like, man, it's such a staple. Like, there have to be enough good games to push it out of the top 10 because it's such a staple game. So maybe a gateway game, you might call it. I hate to use the word gateway games. There's probably some gateway games that I probably wouldn't put on the top 10 list. But anyway, that being said, a little bit of caveat going into this. My top 10 for 2017. These are the games that were, at least on BGG, they are listed as being released in 2017. So there's probably some finickiness with that. I'm not mathing out when a game came out. It's just 2017 is the release date on BGG, unless it's changed since then. My number 10 is Seventh Continent. This is, what kind of game would I call this? I really call it a dungeon crawl, because it's really like a dungeon crawl. Except you're not in a dungeon. You're kind of out in nature, and you're flipping tiles, and you're trying to discover things. You're trying to figure out what happened. It's a little bit of a mystery dungeon crawl. Trying to figure out what happened to you, how you got here, and you're trying to get back, I think. I have not finished this game. This is actually a game that's now in my, I might trade it or move on from it just because it hasn't been played in a while. But I don't know that there might be 2 games, 3 games possibly in that whole thing that I'm like, I'm not going to miss them that much. That one I will miss if I trade it. It's a solid game. It's fun. I will definitely pull it out and get it played at some point down the road. If I don't end up trading it for something else, um, it's enjoyable. I don't know that it's a play twice kind of game. I've not finished it once, but I found it on Facebook for a reasonable price with some expansions added in. And so my copy has 2 of the expansions. Somebody traded me for 1 of the expansions that I ended up pulling out of there. But it's a solid game. I like it. I would recommend it to somebody who either they're soloing, because you can solo this game, or if you just like to have a longer experience with somebody in some kind of a game environment that's pretty light and easy to engage. This one's pretty light and easy to engage. It's not hard to learn. The rule book is pretty well done, easily laid out. It's much easier to engage than, say, like a Gloomhaven or Descent or Sword and Sorcery or something like that, which those are fine games, but they are much deeper with more rules. And I think this one is much more engageable with somebody who might be newer to gaming, possibly. Nice save mechanic in it where you can put your game away, and when you pull it out, the save mechanic is something you actually have to use because it resets certain things. So if you hunt in an area, you'll eventually hunt all the food out of the area, but when you reset, it will reset that hunting aspect, and those tiles will go back into available use again, so you can start hunting once things have built up. So very good game, well designed. I enjoy it. Seven Continents, my number 10. Number 9 is a game that was much higher in my list and has kind of trickled down over time, but it is still a good game, and it's not one that I see myself moving on from very easily, and that's Clans of Caledonia. This is an economic game set in Scotland, and there are these different Scottish clans that you're utilizing. They have asymmetric economic abilities of various sorts, and there's probably about 10 to 12 different clans, and you're buying and selling and trading and building on a map and trying to ultimately get the most points at the end of the game via your economic activities. Largely, it's filling these contracts, and the more contracts you fill, the more likely you are to probably win the game. I think there's a little bit of my impression is that over time, now I've had this probably several years now and played it several times, there's a little bit of a dryness to, I really have to pursue these contracts and build my economy in a very particular way to the large degree, and it really comes down to the contracts, I think, more than anything else. Now, it's possible I haven't played it enough, and there are some other strategies that are equally valid or balancing, but to me, it's felt like over time, there's less dynamicness, so you kind of have to go a certain direction to functionally win the game, especially if all players are kind of created equal as far as their skill and ability in the game. Becomes more linear, I think, over time with the more skill and plays. But it's still a fun game. It's still got nice components, and it's put together well for an economic game, and I like economic games. So Clans is probably going to stay in the collection, but it's my number 9 for 2017. Number 8 is moving back to sort of that classic staple kind of game that you would keep in your collection, even if you like other games that do similar things better as games, but this one is a tough one to move on from. That's Barenpark. I play it on BGA. I don't have a copy of Barenpark in my own collection. I largely play it on BGA, but it is a very fun game. It's just sort of basic tile laying. There's a few other dynamics to the game, but it's a great one to play. If I ever got a copy in my collection, I'd probably keep it in my collection for quite a long time, because it's It's quite easy to teach. It's quite easy to play. There's a little bit of depth to it, you know, to the play mechanic, but not a ton. I'd say the depth is probably somewhat on the line of like Jaipur, you know, something like that. But Barenpark plays, I think, up to 4 players. There probably are expansions, but I don't know that I've played any expansions, or I don't recall. Maybe I have, and I just didn't realize it. But good, solid game. Great game for that year. I feel like it's a good pick at number 8. Number 7. Ooh, number 7. Number 7 is a game. This is one of the few games that I have had in my collection that I traded away and that I really want to get another copy. That doesn't happen too often because usually I won't trade something until I'm like pretty much ready to like, okay, this is not getting played a lot. I might miss it a little, but like I can either play it on BGA or I don't feel the need to have it in my collection. This is one I really want to get back in my collection. That's Ethnos. Ethnos is it's really a card, sort of an asymmetric card set collection game. You have, I want to say there's like 8 to 10 different factions located in the box, and each game you're really going to pick like, I want to say it's like 6 of them, or if maybe there's 12 and you're going to pick 8, something like that. But so there's going to be 4 to 6 factions that you're leaving in the box when you set up a game. So every game has a little bit of variability because of that, because you don't know which, you're going to pick your factions. So everybody will know what factions are being used, but you don't know exactly which sets people are going to try to collect for each faction, and each faction sort of has their own ability for taking control of areas on the map and for gathering sets. And so you have a map of lands, and whenever you win a area, you're going to put or you complete a set, you're putting a token on the map, and so whoever's the most tokens in a given area controls that area. And then there's some other points for controlling certain areas or different connections of areas. But it's a really interesting game. It's not hard to teach. It's not hard to learn. It's pretty easy to play. I enjoyed it. I think it just sat on myself for a long time and didn't get played. And I decided I was like, oh, I'm going to trade it. My family's not playing it. But now I'm like, I really wish I could play it again. And it's one I would like to break out with gaming groups to play every once in a while, because it's a lot of fun. It's a good, solid game. I think it's still being printed. I hope so. This strikes me as one where I could see them coming up with a reprint at some point and making another version of it with some added factions or something of that nature. But good game. I honestly, I probably wouldn't care if I ever got a reprint of it. Might be neat, might be cool, but I would be perfectly happy with the original printing. It's very good. And let's see, what do I have next? Number 6. A game I have in my collection I've had for a while. I've cooled on it a little bit over time, but I still like it. I will not trade it away. It's too good of a worker placement game for me to feel like I want to move on from it. And I get requests to play this on a regular basis. So that is Anachrony by I think Minecraft Games did it, and I'm pretty sure David Turshi did this one. And I'm sorry, I didn't write down a list of all the designers for each of these games, so that's a miss on my part. But I do think Turshi did this one. Anachrony is a lot of fun. It is worker placement. There are some variable dynamics, and you have asymmetric factions. Now you can play with the factions, you can play them symmetrically where everybody's got the same abilities, but it's probably more fun to turn the boards over and play the asymmetric side. And it's set in a futuristic sort of era where the world has this comet has impacted the Earth, and it has this element called neutronium, which kind of causes some time fluctuation. And what is the storyline is that actually the comet is striking in the future, and it's because it's striking in the future that you had this impact in the past that had neutronium, And through the process of some time travel, you've learned, oh, the actual impact is coming down the road and it's going to destroy the Earth. So we need to get as many resources off of Earth and try to establish our factions in some place or another in order to see who's going to win the game at the end of the game. So, what makes this game kind of, I find, very intriguing, and what drew me to it is that it's got time travel in it. And that's obviously, that could be done in a lot of ways that aren't very fun, probably in a board game. But I don't know a lot of board games that have time travel. So I like the fact that you actually create sort of time travel engines on your player board that you can then go back in time, and every round you're going to get to port items from the future if you choose to do so. Well, then whenever you return those items back to the previous eras, then because you have to prevent time anomalies, you have to return those items after you've used them. So you kind of, it's almost like a loan mechanic, but using time travel as that loan mechanic. And you're getting these things, then you can use them, and then you'll get them again as you build your engine, and then you will return them to the past, and then you get some points. There's some points for returning things to the past that you've borrowed from the future. You get points for that, and so that's an in-game point system. But it's really neat. You got these exosuits that you put your workers in, and you send them out, and there's different types of workers that do different things, and so it's a really interesting game. I think it's a lot of fun to play. A little bit of a beast of a setup, but it is enjoyable. But that is, for 2017, the number 6 game. Moving on to number 5. Number 5 is the game that I've got friends that love it. They enjoy it. They will play it at the drop of a hat. I'm like, I'm not a huge fan of this game. So probably somebody will be watching this and they're going to turn this video off as soon as I say what game this is, because they're like, I can't believe that guy doesn't like that game. Yeah. But that's Gaia Project. So sorry, Terra Mystica, Gaia Project. They've never really been my favorites. And to be fair, I have played this game probably 10 times at least. So I've given it a fair shake. I just don't find it enjoyable. It feels like work to me to play this game. And that's not to say it's a bad game. I think it's a fine game. I know that a lot of people love it. I think it just has that array of mechanisms that I just don't find as pleasing. For others, it's probably fantastic, but I do think that there's enough of a following of this game, and I had to give it a slot in these top 10. So it made number 5. There's definitely an argument it could have been higher, but number 5 is where I put it, because some of the other games on here, I was like, well, I really like some of these other ones, and I do think one in particular is underrated. So there you go, Gaia Project number 5. Number 4, I feel pretty confident in calling kind of like a classic. There have been multiple versions of it made, but I sort of like the base game. Now, I haven't played the Queen's Garden. This is Azul. I haven't played Queen's Garden, so I don't know how that one compares with the base Azul, but I like base Azul. This falls in that ballpark of games that I don't want to get out all the time. It's not my favorite game. I mean, I can't even remember where it lands in my top 100. I think it's in there, but it's probably closer to the bottom. But it's a good game, and it's not a game that I ever see myself getting rid of, because I find it pleasant to play, easy to teach. Our family gets it out and probably plays it 3, 4, 5 times a year, if not more, just because it's quick and easy, and everybody is relatively gets some enjoyment out of it. So Azul is a good, solid game, and it's a good one I like to introduce to people to if they're just kind of trying to learn some newer board games. It's a fantastic abstract to learn and play and get into modern gaming if folks are interested in that. All right, number 3. Now, 1, 2, and 3 on this list for 2017. Any one of these could have been 1, 2, or 3. I put them in this order. So definitely love to hear some comments on what you would think. I have no doubt that somebody will comment and say, well, I think Gaia Project should be number 1. that's fine. Put that in the comments. I'd love to hear it. Or if you think I missed a game that should have been on here and I didn't put it on here, put it in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. But number 3 for me, the one game I thought made a good number 3 for 2017 was Spirit Island. Fantastic game. I recently added, well, actually, I've had it in my collection for a while. I've only played it recently. Was the Branch and Claw expansion, and I didn't realize I'd gotten that expansion. I forget how I got it. I don't know if it was like a gift or I just found it on a sale. But when I opened up the box and I started getting the components out and starting to gear up, I didn't realize it added events to the base game. And when I started playing Branch and Claw, it dawned on me, and I don't know if our Eric Royce had designed it this way. My impression was that, like, when he came up with this game design, the Branch and Claw stuff was there. That was initially supposed to be in the base game, but it was complex, and because it was complex, he took some of that stuff out so that people could learn the game and then add some of the stuff in later, because there was an element to base Spirit Island where I felt like, man, this needs something, but I can't quite tell what it is. I mean, it's very complex. The spirits are awesome. The powers are cool. It's really tough to defend against those invaders. But adding in those, I wouldn't say it's so much the tokens that you add, although those are pretty neat. I like those because there's 4 new tokens you add to the game board for various mechanisms in the how they interact with invaders and with the spirits and whatnot. But what really opened it up is you have the event card, and using the event cards, using the Blighted Island, that really opens this up and makes it much more dynamic. And I would say this game went from, I liked it, it was good, it was probably in my, around my 25 to 30 and my top 100, to, man, this is getting in the top 10 to 15 area of my ratings. It's a very good game. It's a fun co-op. It's heavy. It takes some time. You get 4 players. You're going to spend 3-4 hours playing this game, but it's a blast, and it has some really thinky, crunchy decisions. Now, if you lose, it might not be 3-4 hours because you'll probably lose before then. But if you end up being able to win the game, it's going to take some time, and you're going to have to really work at it, but it's a lot of fun. So Spirit Island, number 3 for 2017. Number 2, this is one I'd love to hear comments on, because feedback I've gotten is, like, most people agree that this is kind of an underrated game that flies under the radar, but it's a fantastic game that I am shocked that it doesn't get more oomph or rank higher than it does on the overall BGG list, but that's Heaven and Ale. Heaven and Ale is I don't want to call it an engine. It's not really an engine builder. It's a tile laying game where you're trying to get your ingredients to move up a track and ultimately just trying to string together points. But it's very challenging, and there's with the pieces that are, you're going around the board and you have to pick up pieces and put them, and then you're going to put them on those ingredients on your board. You're going to use them to generate money, or you're going to use them to generate better ingredients. But it's just a fantastic Euro game that I've had in my collection for probably 5 years. I mean, I don't know if I got it in 2017, but I got it probably no later than 2018. And it is just absolutely still, I got right now, it's my number 2 game, I think. I think it's my number 2. There's a couple of games with competition there, but it might be, actually it might have been 4 or 5 now, because I think I decided I was going to move Wingspan Arc Nova up a little bit more. So, but it is a good, solid game. It's one that I enjoy playing over and over again, and I struggle with it. Even after playing it multiple times, I still struggle with the challenge that this game gives me in trying to work out how to get the most points out of it. I mean, every once in a blue moon, I'll get a game where I get 40, 50 points. Half the time, I feel like I'm getting, ending up with 15 or 20 points, and usually somebody ends up with a lot more than that. But it's a blast to play. So that is my number 2, Heaven and Ale for 2017, and number one game for 2017, Gloomhaven. I have a hard time not giving Gloomhaven that number 1 spot for a multitude of reasons. I love it, but I mean, I think popular opinion would argue that this is maybe the best game that came out in 2017. Isaac Childers did a fantastic job putting together a great, what I would largely call a dungeon crawl, but a fantastic version of that. The best version to date, in my opinion, of a dungeon crawl. I mean, maybe Frosthaven competes now, but I don't think anybody else has done one as good. And when he did this in 2017, there was nothing else as good as that. I mean, it was very well done, very well crafted, very well thought through, mechanically and otherwise. I mean, sure, there were some things that could use improvements, and they've now improved on some of that in Frosthaven. There were probably some things people might, over time they were like, well, this seems odd, or we had to house rule this because it didn't work kind of the way it seems like it would intuitively work. And they fixed some of those things. But even with those, I would say, nitpicky things, it was still very well thought out. So Gloomhaven, just a fantastic, definitely falls into the realm of like, if I'm telling a gamer like, what's a game you need to try? Not that you need to buy it, but you need to try it at least once. You need to play a scenario, or you need to give it one shot. Gloomhaven is on that list of like, you should at least play one scenario and see what you think. But yeah, that is the top 10 list for 2017. So if you stuck with this video, wow, I rambled a lot. So thank you for sticking with it. I hope it was enjoyable. I hope it was maybe provide some good fodder for discussion in the comments. Like and subscribe if you get a chance. Feel free to share with others, and let me know what you think about some of my selections here. If there's something that you are interested in seeing a playthrough of and like me to do a video, post it down there. I mean, if I don't have the game, I can't promise it, but I know a number of people that own a lot of games, so sometimes I can borrow them. If I'm able to do that, I'm often swapping games with friends to try things out, and I will try to do a video where I can. But until next time, have a great December. Thanks for joining Unraveled Game Thoughts today.